Welcome to the Unlist. Today we're going to talk about controversial fragrances that I like. Normally, when it comes to controversial fragrances, I don't really care. If it smells good to me, then it goes into my collection if I like it enough to want to have a bottle of it. Case closed. But I've noticed that there are certain fragrances out there, collectors in the online space, typically people who follow cults of personality. They follow the big YouTubers, the big TikTokers, Instagrammers. And if they say to steer clear of something, then people usually do without ever smelling it. Like, they just go, okay, well, my Lord and Savior says that this is trash, so I can't even sample it, let alone entertain the notion of it being good, right? It's kind of a shame. People shouldn't be so gullible and so led along by a string, like the Pied Piper with his little flute. You should really evaluate things on your own and take the opinions of people who you trust, whether it's me or someone else, and just use that to inform a decision rather than make a decision for you on your behalf. You should never let content creators of any kind, no matter how esteemed you think they are, just make up your mind for you, because at that point you're not doing this hobby for you, you're following instructions. And I only follow instructions when I'm doing something like assembling furniture or using a wiring diagram to replace a receptacle in my house. Then I follow instructions. Otherwise, I do me. Okay? Same thing with recipes when you're cooking. You figure out the basics and then you embellish and make it your own. So, controversial fragrances. I have a number of them, obviously. And even though they do garner controversy, I feel like in some cases it's not really deserved. So, let's start talking about a few of them. That comprises the meat of this video, basically. And I will start with one that doesn't have as much controversy maybe now as it used to have at one point. So the controversy has kind of died down some. But let's ease us into something, right? That's how I'm going to do it. Yuzu Man by Parfums Caron, released in 2011. What does it smell like? Well, it's a very soft, woody citrus fragrance. It has a degree of fig in it, which fig gives you that sort of lactonic, fruity smell that in higher doses can almost smell sometimes kind of I want to say almost kind of wilted in a bit, but in lower doses can give you that sort of fresh, sort of woody, fruity smell. Fig fragrances were really popular in the 90s and 2000s. So things like Dune, okay, things like Salvatore Ferragamo Pour Homme, things like the original Marc Jacobs fragrance, and of course the niche superstar that started the whole thing, Philosophos by Diptyque. I'm not a fan of Philosophos. I think that's too much fig in my opinion. Too much fig. But fig fragrances were a thing. And Vera Wang for men was a fig fragrance as well. More of a fig tobacco, that one. But they had their day in the sun. So fast forward to 2011, okay, and perfumer Richard Fraisse basically releases a fresh, citric, woody fragrance that uses top notes to emulate yuzu, which is a Japanese citrus, okay? And yuzu is a very bright, dry sort of citrus smell. There's this amazing yuzu soda that I get from the local ramen shop up here that I like a lot. It's also part of ponzu, if you know what that is. So it's a very, very Japanese flavor. You don't get it much out of Japan, outside of Japan, rather. So obviously, a lot of you are going to say, oh, well, Low DC, right? Low DC Poron by Issey Miyake. That's got a big wallop of yuzu in it, and you would be correct, it does. So this fragrance is much more subtle with the yuzu, and it really puts the yuzu on top of that fig sort of hedione, white floral materials, and sort of a combination of cedarwood, salty ambroxan, faux ambergris kind of base. So it's got a dry, uplifting freshness, the yuzu, the fig, and it's actually quite good, but it was controversial. Why? Well, it's controversial because this was a big knee-jerk away from what people expected. And perfumer Richard Fraisse was already a controversial figure within longtime fans of House Caron, because he had been sort of the custodian of the brand since the late 80s, since the Ailes Group purchased Parfums Caron from the previous owners, who were related to Felice Vanapuia, and so he was put in charge of maintaining the legacy. I guess he was sort of 1 foot in, 1 foot out. He did a decent job of preserving the classics, maybe not as well as some would have liked, but his own original creations, because he was a very avant-garde perfumer, very experimental perfumer, his own creations would always just rub the classic fans the wrong way, would rub the hardcore vintage Caron snobs the wrong way. So a lot of stuff he came up with, like Lady Caron, and then of course fragrances like this, L'Anarchiste is another one. Just, yeah. The classic Caron fans were expecting more Ernest Daltroff style worship. They wanted big, heavy, round, redolent fragrances, classic fragrances. Sort of the same thing with Guerlain fans. Guerlain fans want Guerlainade in every fragrance. They want everything to recall the 1920s, everything to recall the 1930s. You just can't do that, though. And love Fraisse or hate him, he took big risks. Love him or hate him, he took very big risks. And he even recomposed the original Poron to be closer to it was in the 30s, because the formula had drifted over the decades, and by the 80s it was really musky, really, really, really musky. You know, never made to be that musky, honestly. So he kind of cleaned it up some and restored it to what he thought the original vision was supposed to be, and people hated that too. They hated that too. So I've got an old bottle, and I've got one of his bottles and a more recent backup, and honestly they don't seem that much different from one another. And then I've got that 80s one before he came on board, right? I've got the 80s one, and it's really musky. It's the odd man out. So I think he did a good job. And his son, very brief tenure that he had, his son did a good job too. His son came on board right after this. This was like the last masculine fragrance that he made before he stepped away and let his son take over. William Fraisse. William Fraisse had Parfums Caron only until about 2018, because then you guys know Ariane de Rothschild bought the brand from the Ailes Group. The Ailes Group were losing money, so they washed their hands of it. Rothschild came on board, and she just fired William Fraisse. Said she wasn't going to, but did anyway. Fired him and scrubbed all his perfumes. Mercilessly scrubbed all his perfumes. and also scrubbed a lot of the Richard Frey stuff as well. All of it just kind of chopping block. And this is one of the fragrances that I think survived. I could be wrong. Last time I checked, I saw this on their website. Might not be on there anymore, but if it's discontinued, oh well. Wasn't a big success anyway. But if it's still available, it's actually pretty nice. If you want that nice, dry, fresh, citric bit of fig, you don't get too many fig fragrances these days. It's not a note that really gets a lot of play, which is why when Essential Parfums released their fig infusion fragrance, I picked that up right away. Because, like I said, Philosopher's is too much for me. Too much fig. But if it's balanced correctly, it's enjoyable. And this is kind of like that with a fresh, uplifting yuzu note on top of the fig. So it's like yuzu, fig, woods, and ambroxan. Simple, effective, great for a summer day. Maybe not the best performance. Okay, maybe not the best, but that's okay. Controversial though, because the man who created it was controversial, and he just was not delivering on the expectations of the collectors. The same kind of people who would never buy a new fragrance anyway. All they want are the deep vintages. All they want are the surviving stock on eBay. So really, who cares what they have to say? You're not supporting the brand. Your opinion's sort of invalid anyway after a certain point. Hate to say that, but all the guys that go, rah, 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 things back the way they used to be, rah, 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 you wouldn't buy the shit anyway. You would still buy the old stuff. Even if they were 100% corrected, steered course back to the way it was, and everything was exactly the way you want it, you'd still buy the old shit anyway, because you wouldn't trust it. You'd have a little tinfoil hat on and go, you can't see me getting back to you. So, I don't know what to make of that, but that's why this was controversial. Unfortunately. Now, another one was pretty controversial. This one I can understand more. I'm a bit more sympathetic to this one. The controversy, not the fragrance. So this is Terre de Hermes Eau Givrée. Okay. This was not released as a new flanker. This was released as a replacement. Whenever a brand says we're going to replace something because we can't make the old one anymore, that always sends everyone completely off the fucking deep end. Right? The sky is falling. Pull your hair out. Batten down the hatches. Lock up your children. Hide your women. The hordes are coming to burn down the village. Right? That's the panic mode that sets in. And that's exactly what happened. And I can understand, and I'm more sympathetic with this than I am with the Caron situation, because like I said, a bunch of old grizzled fucks who wouldn't buy the fragrances anyway. You know, this was a bit different because this was a much more reasonable thing. So this was the fragrance that got replaced. Terre de Hermes Eau Très Fraîche came out in 2014, and it was a very unique fragrance. It was Terre de Hermes with mineral notes, aquatic notes, rose, like a very prominent, noticeable rose, and just a very sort of salty, fresh, slightly musky take. That's just fantastic. Like, you can tell that some of Épice Marine from the Hermescence range was borrowed and put into this. You can also tell that a little bit more of the sort of Pierre Bourdon, Edmond Runitzka kind of vibe was carried over into this fragrance versus the other Terre de Hermes. So it's a very unique fragrance, but apparently it didn't sell that well compared to the others. But that's not what killed it. What killed it was IFRA restrictions on hydroxycitronellol. So Lirol and Liliol, okay? One of them was completely banned, and the other was restricted. Don't know which one's which. You perfumers out there can edify me on that. but one was completely banned, the other was restricted, and the overall amount of hydroxycitronellol that could be in a fragrance was also reduced. And that went into effect in 2020, right around the pandemic is when that went into effect. Apparently, this fragrance had such a large dose of those materials that, according to then current house perfumer, God, what the hell's her name? Oh my goodness, Christine Nagel. According to Christine Nagel, there was no way to reformulate this with those missing materials. You couldn't reformulate around it. They were too much a part of the structure. It just was not feasible. It would be unrecognizable. Now, I don't know if that's entirely true because they recently redid Acqua di Gio with the white floral materials taken out and reduced, and that still smells good. Granted, it is a bit rounder and a bit muskier than the old formula. Old formula was a bit more sheer, but it's still recognizably Acqua di Gio. So I wonder how much of that was just the accountants, the penny pinchers, the people sitting at the desk saying, we don't want to spend the money to research how to reformulate this fragrance because, like I said, didn't sell super well compared to the others. So was it that it was impossible? Or was it that it was economically not really profitable to waste the money on trying to make it work? I'll let you conspiracy guys, you can figure that out. Make your opinion wherever you want. So the replacement fragrance was this. And that's the controversy. You don't even have to smell the fragrance. The controversy just begins and ends with it replacing something. So this fragrance was kind of fucked from the start because no one was going to give it a fair chance. No one was going to evaluate it based on its own merits. No one was going to look at it as an addition to the line because instead it was a replacement for something else that they liked and didn't want taken away. Now, if you're someone like me who had the old one anyway and a backup of, you don't care. It's like I'm set for life on Eau Givrée Fresh. I'm not worried. So I was like, okay, let's try the new one. And yeah, big grapefruit note, really big, almost like photorealistic, lifelike, squeezing the grapefruit into your face like that. Big grapefruit note. Mineral notes out the wazoo, cranked up. Very woody as well. Dry, woody, almost nosebleed levels of dry. So you got to be careful with spraying this. It's stronger than you think it is. People don't realize how strong this is. But yes, it's a different animal from Eau Givrée Fresh. But honestly, the devil's advocate in me, right, says that this actually resembles Terre de Hermes, the original. This resembles Terre de Hermes more than Eau Givrée Fresh does. Eau Givrée Fresh was a bigger deviation. But I know some of you are going to say, oh, but what about the new one, the Eau de Parfum Intense? That didn't exist. You can't retroactively throw that in there and say, oh, but that's a big deviation too. That's a 2025 fragrance. This was not 2020. This was like 2021. Okay, so you can't make that argument. That's just moving the goalposts around. That's one of those things people do to try to make themselves right in every argument. By twisting moving the goals around and all that, finding straw men or whataboutism stuff. No, we're not doing that. So, at the time this came out, this fit the theme of the house a little more than this did. Do I like this more? No. I still like this one more. But I have to be honest and say that this was a deviation. This was less of a deviation. So I can understand why they would make it like this. But at the same time, I am more sympathetic to people who were angry at this. People that really miss this. Like I said, I'm more sympathetic. But I still like the fragrance, regardless of the controversy. Another one. Controversial fragrance. Not as much to really say about this, but it is still controversial. This came out in 2019, year before the pandemic locked everybody inside for a couple of years. I think this is a fantastic fragrance. And the controversy is just the packaging. Literally just the bottle. And I don't want to turn this into some kind of political culture war dumpster fire and start getting all the people from both sides of the aisle coming into my comments and ripping each other apart and ripping me apart. So I'm not going to touch too much upon the specifics of the controversy, but I'm going to give you a few guesses. Why would guys be angry at a men's fragrance coming in a bottle shaped like a teddy bear? Knowing what you know about the current division in our social fabric, right? We've got people that have hold very extreme views, very unforgiving views on things. And I'll give you one guess as to why they saw this. Couldn't laugh at it, couldn't find it funny, couldn't see any of the irony or anything involved with it, just automatically considered this to be some kind of like affront to their identity as men. That's really what it boils down to. And it gets really creepy because you have people that try to read stuff in between the lines that's not there because they don't know about Franco Moschino. They don't know his whole thing. He unfortunately died in the 90s, but they don't know his whole thing and how he liked to basically just hold up a funhouse mirror to the rest of the fashion industry. That's kind of what he did. And his fashions were like that, and his perfumes were also like that too. I mean, stuff came in Windex bottles. He had double-necked bottles. All kinds of crazy shit. That's just the way Moschino has always been. So this was not a surprise to me. But, like I said, some people got really, really upset. And one of the darker, more sinister things that I've read is people tried to say that this fragrance and its packaging symbolized, I'm just going to say CP. If you don't know what CP stands for, I'm going to let you Google that one. I don't want to get in trouble with the YouTube censor police. But they tried to say that this was a fragrance for chomos. And I'm like, where the fuck do you even get that? Where in the flying fuck do you even get that? How do you make that connection? Right? It's ridiculous. What does it smell like? Well, it's an interesting rose fragrance. Because if you know the actual context behind this brand and the actual context behind the fragrance line is there was an entire toy range, right? That put a teddy bear aesthetic on handbags, okay? Printed teddy bears on the shirts. The women's fragrance, the original toy, was actually a bottle inside of a teddy bear. And then it was a Toy 2, which had this bottle. And this is the men's version of Toy 2, effectively. And it's a rose fragrance. It's a musky green rose. This is a throwback to stuff like Aramis 900. A throwback to stuff like Elaine Delon Equidos. A throwback to a lot of those sort of gender-bending kind of men's rose fragrances. And that's a very bold thing to release in 2019. So that in and of itself is going to ruffle some feathers. But like I said, the weird sort of political culture war that started to emerge, and just guys flat out saying that I will not even smell that because I feel like my masculinity is being attacked by it being in a teddy bear bottle. And I'm just like, oh my god, really? Come on. Like, you guys are okay with having like stuff in lightning bolt bottles and stuff in bottles that have like big phallic resemblances and like stuff like this. I mean, what the hell is this, right? But you know, that's a bridge too far. The teddy bear is a bridge too far. It's just silly. So, really silly. Another controversial fragrance in my collection. People really got mad at. And this one's actually the fragrance. It's not. It's not the bottle. It's actually the fragrance for once. And it's this one. Gucci Guilty Absolute Pour Homme. So, what's controversial about this? Well, the long and short of it is, at the time, the creative director, Alessandro Michele, wanted to move Gucci Guilty, the fragrance range, away from all of the clean, sweet, aromatic, safe stuff that the line had been pumping out under the previous administration. So that means stuff like the original men's fragrance, black, O, all that stuff, intense. Time to get rid of those. Time to make some more bold, creative things. So the Eau de Parfum was a salty rose fragrance, actually of similar stripe to this Moschino here. This was of similar stripe to that Moschino fragrance, honestly. A little bit different. This is lavender and rose mixed together. So, yeah, it's a bit different, but he made a cologne fragrance, he made an oud fragrance, and then this one. This was the big one. This was a big throwback leather fragrance. Leather and patchouli and vetiver and really not much else. So Alberto Morillas had a lot of fun making this. He had so much fun making this that he reused the formula in this multiple times for other fragrances. So Dark Lord by Kilian was a take on this. Philip Plein, No Limits, was a take on this. I have another fragrance here. Elevated Oud by Zara, another take on that Gucci Guilty Absolute. This one's a bit more rubbery, a bit rounder and heavier. So the controversy is the fact that this was so old school and so just brazenly gasoline leather jacket, you know, just so brazenly masculine, like Yatagan 2.0 effectively is what this was. Yatagan 2.0 is that you got you got everyone who would have loved this fragrance basically saying, oh, we can't like this fragrance, we can't enjoy this fragrance because it's a Gucci Guilty fragrance and it's embarrassing. You know, I get my snob cred pulled, right? I get my card pulled for liking this. So I kind of have to pretend like it's like I don't want to like it. And then you had people saying that, oh, it's too good for this world. It's going to be discontinued right away. Oh no. So let's just ignore it because it's already going to be discontinued, so why bother? It's too good to be true. It's a mirage. It's a fake fragrance. It's just a shimmer in the heat waves, right? And then of course the young people who were into the sweet stuff, into the fresh stuff, they were like, oh, this is dad's cologne. Oh, this is for old guys. We don't want to wear this. What the fuck is this? So you had this weird situation where everyone collectively just pushed back against this fragrance. The vintage guys pushed back against it. The snobs pushed back against it. The young trendy people pushed back against it. And the people who loved it but were scared it was going to be taken away from them would rather just not have it and push back against it. So it's like everyone kind of just, I don't know, it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. They wanted this fragrance to fail. Everyone wanted this fragrance to fail, so guess what? It failed. It got discontinued. It got pulled from shelves very quickly. But what's weird is the bottles still linger in the aftermarket now. And there are rumors that Gucci still produces small amounts of it just to keep it in the market, which I can't really say for sure because I don't really keep tabs on it. But the general opinion is that this stuff is discontinued and it's just taking forever to sell up. But whatever the case may be, this didn't become a big success. Daring and bold attempt at realigning the aesthetic of Gucci Guilty. And it was like people either thought it was too good to be true, or it wasn't good enough, or it was too anachronistic and retro. But it was either too much of something or not enough of something, or it's going to be taken from us, so you might as well just not even get into it. You know, keep with our bottles of Yatagan, keep with our bottles of whatever, and just don't take the bait. And I'm like, what the fuck, people? It's like, this is why we can't have nice things. We can't have nice things because when they decide to make something that is bold and different and more artistic or a throwback to a different era, y'all just go no. And then I don't know what to say, man. But yeah, there's a lot of controversy around this. And it just made me like, I don't get it. So there you go. There's 4 fragrances that I really like. And all of them have controversy surrounding them. And I don't understand why. Now, there's other ones I can do. I can do a part 2 to this if you guys want later on. But ran out of time. So here you go. Controversial fragrances that I happen to like. Thanks for watching. I may do more next time.